welcome to Crime in Court. My name's Heather, and this is the part two of the Internal Affairs investigates Stoughton police officers who are believed to be responsible in the tragic death of Sandra Birchmore. So, with that, we are going to continue on where we left off. So, we had started this uh, internal affairs report. It's a 60-page report. We're halfway through. We discussed it goes through the different parts of the investigation. So they're investigating the investigation into Sandra Birchmore's loss of life. So the person writing this report is Deputy Chief Holmes, and he was asked February 5th, the day after Sandra Birchmore was found. Uh, he was asked, Deputy Holmes was asked to conduct an investigation into what happened. And so we're noticing a pattern. Robert Devine, Matthew Farwell, William Farwell, they're all coming up in the investigation here. And it came up pretty much was it the morning of? Now I'm confusing myself because I haven't been on this in a couple days and I go from case to case and it's hard to remember all the facts forever. They just, anyways. So they knew right away that Matt Farwell was potentially the father of Sandra Birchmore's baby. They knew that immediately going in. So that's why I think they thought something was fishy and they went into this separate internal affairs investigation. So we left off, basically, they were talking about Lieutenant Fanning, who's with the state police, was going through Sandra Birchmore's laptop. They discovered conversation threads with someone who they thought is Officer Robert Devine. And remember, he is the head of the Explorers Youth Program that the Stoughton police officers had to bring in youth from the community, teach them about law enforcement, anyone who is interested in becoming an officer, teach them what they do and potentially help them get into law enforcement if they wanted to. And Sandra always had a very strong admiration for law enforcement. That's why she was interested in this program. She really wanted to um, either become an officer or have something to do with law enforcement because um, she also wanted to go into the military. That's a whole another story. But so she was very into uniformed service. So we found these, or they found in this investigation, they found that they were conversations with Robert Devine on Facebook Messenger, and he was going by another name, Marty Riggs, but it's still believed to be Devine. And they were talking about meeting up and her coming to his patrol car and doing some redacted things and discussing some redacted things. So yeah, Robert Devine, potentially a suspect in this as well. So on Thursday, June 2nd, 2020, oh wait, nope, sorry, that's not where I left off. I didn't mean to keep reading. So, anyways, what else did we talk about? We left off where this gentleman, Holmes, Chief Deputy Holmes, received a 64 gigabyte thumb drive from Lieutenant Fanning on June 7th, 2022. So now we're going to continue on. This is where we left off. So sorry about that. All right, so on Thursday, June 9th, 2022, I requested a CJIS offline search of any and all CJIS users within the Commonwealth that may have queried Sandra Birchmore or her vehicle. So CGIS, I just believe, is like where you can look up records. It's like your criminal record, or not, well, criminal records would be in there, but driving records, anything like that, where they can verify people's identities and whatnot. On Thursday, like the police database, basically. On Thursday, June 9th, 2022, PIs La Italian and Fries met with Redacted at her home in Redacted. The interview had been previously arranged to take place at 5:30 p.m. See person's interview summary below. On Thursday, June 9th, 2022, I asked Union President Barber to serve a notice to William Farwell. William Farwell and Matt Farwell are the other two that are potentially involved in this case. They worked under Robert Devine in this Youth Explorers program. So that's how these three are all related. All right. Well, four. That's how Sandra's that's how Sandra knows them all too. So that's how all four of them are related is this Explorers program. All right, so Union President served notice to William Farwell. The following day, I received a confirmation and a request that the date of the interview be pushed back a week. On behalf of the town, I honored that request. On Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, President Barber came to my office indicating that Farwell had previously spoke to him about his interpretation of the USSERA, I'm going to call it a USERA Act, and that he had located a staff investigator from the USDOL. He provided me with the contact information and asked that I contact the investigator, William Coughlin. On Friday, June 10th, 2022, I received a response to my offline search request. Responses would be limited to Stoughton CJIS users data only per CJIS policy. I discussed with CJIS director a process for obtaining statewide information. I then submitted a second request for an offline search for all queries of Matthew Farwell, William Farwell, and Robert Devine. So every query from those individuals. On Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, I sorted previously held files from the Police Explorers program and took only those files and documents with investigative relevance to 21 uh, IA. I don't know, 1 IA, whatever that is, whatever this case number is. So all old files are archived in the dead records room in the basement and marked Police Explorers Old and taped shut in the event that a future need arises for further review. Why are you taping them shut? That's weird, right? It's like, well, it's almost like don't come in here unless you really, really need to. On Thursday, June 23rd, 2022, after discussing that William Farwell had violated the CJIS policy and user agreement by querying his own personal data on an intermittent basis for the entire time he was a user. So that's a lot of searches of yourself, which is a fireable offense in and of itself. But yet, he was also searching, I believe, Sandra Birchmore too. And this Deputy Chief Holmes says I made contact with the SSRA Kate Kelly of the FBI and asked that she query William Farwell's personal data through their database. A query was made and no outstanding or archived records were located. So he was like, dude, this is suspicious. Let's ask the FBI to look up his records. And nothing really significant, but still, I'm glad they took that measure. We discussed the possibility of a VICAP query at a later date, as in my opinion, a CJIS authorized user performing multiple queries of themselves is highly suspect and unusual. The query files, I'm going to repeat that. It's highly suspect and unusual. The query files were also shared with PI's Law Italian to be incorporated into the interview of William Farwell. Interesting, huh? Why are you searching yourself so many times? On Thursday, June 23rd, 2022, I was made aware by Redacted that had been making allegations on social media about getting into a fight with a female member of the Stoughton Police Department last week. I asked Redacted to send a message to the user on Facebook Messenger from the Stoughton Police Department Facebook page. The feature would not function or allow a message to be sent. I reviewed the Facebook page for Redacted. There appears to be a low occurrence of activity on the account and is likely a Facebook alias page. I copied the post and entered it in an exhibit. On July 21st, 2022, I emailed William Farwell a notice of an investigatory interview. I received a response from the Mass Cop attorney Patrick Bryant acknowledging receipt of the interview notice, among other things. Attorney Bryant indicated that there were schedule conflicts for the date of July 28, 2022. On Tuesday, July 26, 2022, Patrol Union President D. Barber requested on behalf of Officer W. Farwell that he be allowed to come to the station to clear out his locker of personal belongings. So remember, he's already been asked to leave. Barber did not have any disposition of Farwell's intent or plans to resign from his employment. He had been not to leave, but he was on suspension. So I arranged to be present with Barber and Farwell while he retrieved personal property from his locker. At Farwell's request, a tritium front post sight and streamlight TR1HL was removed, whatever that is, some equipment from his department, issued firearm, chief custody since admin leave. Okay, so that's good. The chief had his gun. Was returned to him upon his arrival at the station on Tuesday, July 27th. Oh wait, his gun was returned to him upon his arrival. Is that what I'm hearing? Yes. Okay. In turn, he returned the department's original issue front post sight for his department issued Glock pistol. While clearing out his locker, he returned a duty belt, radio charger, belt keepers, handcuffs, a vest carrier, two vest carriers, and an extra radio that he had been using for his collateral work on radios. He removed 3 boxes full of property and placed them in his personal vehicle and then returned and went through his department mailbox. He had left the station accompanied by Detective Barber. Wow. All right. They have to put in the report everything that he had to return and what had been in his locker. So it's kind of cool to see the inside process of the investigation. William Farwell tendered his resignation to Chief McNamara via Patrol Union President Barber. The resignation was effective August 1st, 2022. An interview was drafted. Had William Farwell been interviewed, he would have been asked a series of questions that are detailed in Exhibit 14. On August 5th, 2022, redacted, were served notices of witness interviews for interviews that were to take place on Thursday, August 11th. On August 12th, I inquired of the school department about school records that could be in existence for redacted. I was interested in guidance, adjustment, and school psychologist records to include notes. I received a reply on Monday, August 15th, that only academic records existed and that what I was seeking no longer existed. So they were looking for somebody's psychology and looking for somebody's behavioral records. Basically, they wanted to know if they had problems. I wonder if it was one of the officers that they're investigating here, looking for their records from school. On Monday, August 15th, 2022, I was made aware that Chief McNamara that Robert Devine had resigned from his position as a patrol officer. Remember, he got demoted. He was a chief deputy, and then he got promoted to demoted to a patrol officer when there were some allegations of him. What was it now? Why was he demoted? I can't remember. But there were some allegations of something, and he was just demoted. So effective Tuesday, August 16th, that was when he resigned. The letter to Chief McNamara indicated that he was filing for retirement, among other discussion. Devine requested that if there was any new area to cover with him concerning this investigation, to send it to him in writing. I mailed a series of questions to Devine, and he later replied by mail. And that's in an exhibit. I wish we had that exhibit. On Monday, August 22nd, 2022, I began compiling PDF files from the Cellbrite program onto a terabyte drive to permanently preserve the documents as they are too large to print. Some experts of communication from those drives were pulled to create exhibits for interviews. On Wednesday, August 24th, PI La Italian returned to me all raw data that had been contained on thumb drives that he had been given by me, that's a weird way to say it, so that he could collaterally review the investigative data. I wiped these files clean as they were redundant to exhibits that are referenced in the report, and I destroyed the thumb drive. On Thursday, August 25th, I received via first class mail a letter from Robert Devine in response to my questions that were mailed. Devine's response was received by me after I documented his credibility assessment as part of this report. Hmm. So that's part of his job here, is to assess their credibility, the officers that they're investigating here. So I maintain this assessment despite Devine's response. I assessed Devine's responses to be consistent with his credibility. Devine opened his responses by indicating, "Of course, I desire to cooperate." His response to the third question outrageously makes claims about accounts being hacked. I performed an IMC in-house records check of Devine and located no incident reports in which Devine reports being hacked is in or is the victim of a computer crime. So Devine is now he's claiming, now that they're investigating this into Sandra Birchmore, he's claiming, "Oh no, 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 all those communications and things that are deleted on my computer, that's all been hacked. Somebody hacked me," but there's never a report or any kind of statement. There's nothing corroborating the fact that Devine may have been hacked in the past. So it can't really prove that he had been hacked. All right. So note, he is listed as victims of other crimes such as A and B. PO. Okay. So there's like a restraining order against a woman. That's what it was. He was having an affair. Something about this all came to light, and that's what got him demoted, I think. I know he was having an affair, and his mistress was threatening stuff, and so he was blaming his mistress that she hacked him and deleted all of his emails. This response is consistent theme that was developed and employed throughout the investigation of Paul White, June 2015 investigation. So another individual did an investigation into Devine when this happened, when this whole thing about the mistress and everything happened, which was obviously before Sandra Birchmore had met the uh, Farwell brothers and Devine. All right, so persons interviewed, something redacted here. PI La Italian and I interviewed redacted at MBTC Randolph on Tuesday, December 21st at approximately 10:30 a.m. Redacted was accompanied by Redacted. The following summarizes the interview. Redacted. He is friendly with the Farwell brothers and Officer Devine. He would not describe the relationship as a close friendship. Redacted met Sandra when Redacted was not certain of the exact time frame of this. He befriended Sandra, Redacted, prior to his employment as a Redacted. I wonder if this is Josh Heel that they're redacting. She would often visit is Redacted is familiar with the difficulties that Sandra Birchmore encountered in life. Redacted is familiar with Sandra Birchmore's Redacted with Matthew Farwell, maybe baby, because it's a short word, I'm assuming. He would discourage her from high expectations of where the relationship was headed. There were discussions between Redacted and Sandra Birchmore that describe Redacted. Thank you. That's very helpful. We understand now. All this Redacted. When I inquired about Redacted, he took a break with his Redacted. He returned to the interview room and indicated that he wanted to consult with legal counsel before proceeding with the interview. I think this might be Jatiel. Redacted second interview. A second interview of Redacted was conducted on February 9th, 2022 at 2 p.m. at the Abington Hall in a prearranged conference room. Oh, they forgot to redact that one. Heel was present with Redacted. I'm sure there was some attorney, Redacted. We discussed Redacted use of different social media accounts. He told us of the ones that he currently has and previously had. Redacted elaborated, Redacted. Matthew Farwell used some type of location sharing application that so that he could track the location of Sandra Birchmore. Redacted was also familiar with an extensive message that Sandra drafted and sent to Redacted. The nature of the message was ultimately intended to be sent to Matthew Farwell, Redacted. Sandra was telling Redacted that Matthew was Redacted. On April 6th, 2022, I interviewed Angelique Pirozzi in her home in South Boston. We spoke for a short while before I turned the recorder on about the internal affairs process. After the recorder was on, Angelique explained that she is Sandra Birchmore's mother's first cousin, Denise Birchmore. She explained when asked her education, current employer, National Education Association, as a legislative advocate. She spoke of her learning of the loss of Sandra Birchmore's life and her later interview with the MSP. Her goal is being interviewed with her goal in being interviewed was to raise awareness about Sandra's relationship with Matthew Farwell and how the relationship had grown toxic prior to the end of Sandra's life. She went on to describe the pressure that Sandra was placing on Matthew Farwell to participate in the baby's life. And that could be a key factor here. The pressure to participate in the baby's life, whereas he was on baby number 3 with wife at home. He didn't want a fourth baby, I'm sure, with some girl that he was grooming since she was 15 years old. And he probably didn't want his wife to know about it. Well, newsflash, Matt, things are probably worse for you now. And she probably knows. Your wife probably knows about Sandra now. All right, so generally things were not going well, and Angelique was encouraging Sandra to back off of pressuring Matthew. Redacted had breakfast with Sandra a couple of weeks prior to her homicide. After this, Angelique learned about the pregnancy after communicating with Sandra, giving Redacted advice. Redacted had concerns for Sandra's well being based on the fact that she was in a relationship. Redacted received contact from many of Sandra's friends after Sandra's homicide. She communicated with them and received a lot of secondhand information about the relationship. She also learned that Redacted. We discussed the Police Explorers program. Redacted was unfamiliar with the program, but described Sandra as Redacted. Had secondhand knowledge that Sandra had babysat for Matthew Farwell and his wife. How sick is that? That Matthew Farwell is having Sandra babysit his kids. It's so gross. In the past. Based on her knowledge, notwithstanding it being secondhand, when asked if Redacted believed that Sandra when asked if Redacted thought Sandra Birchmore was a person who could be redacted, when asked, okay, so they're not going to give us any answers. All right, contact was made directly by me and later by PI La Italian by phone in an attempt to interview Redacted. This investigation identified Redacted as a longtime and close friend of Sandra Birchmore. After discussion with Redacted, she did not want to be interviewed in a formal capacity. She was later interviewed by telephone by PI La Italian. See interview summary below. I made contact with Redacted through investigative means. He provided a cell phone for Redacted, indicating that Redacted. After several attempts by me and later by PIs La Italian and Fries, Redacted would not respond and was ultimately not interviewed by me. She was interviewed by phone by PI La Italian. See interview summary below. Um, I guess they're not giving us the summary. All right, so this is now talking about Officer Devine. On April 11th, 2022, Officer Devine was interviewed. Okay, maybe this is it. Um, at the MPTC headquarters in Randolph, Mass. PIs La Italian and Fries conducted the interview. Attorney Patrick Bryan was present to represent Devine on behalf of the Patrolmen's Union. The interview is summarized below. Devine took over control of the Police Explorers in approximately 2003. He stated that it was in existence prior to his assignment as the juvenile officer. He was ordered to run the program by the former chief, Cochapa. After taking over, Devine gave the first group that he took on the option of making the program less about scouting and to run it like a junior police academy. Okay, so that's how they were running it. It was almost like militant. The group went with this option, and program remained the way and that way until it ended. So it remained kind of this militant junior police academy. Devine described the program, its structure, rank, ride-alongs, and age groups, which were 13 through 18. Requirement for parental consent as well as advertising for the program were also discussed, and we read through something where we learned that Sandra's mother, before she passed away, was actually really appreciative of this program, and she wrote a letter, I believe it was to Devine. She wrote a letter to someone in the Explorers program just saying like how wonderful this program is. It's really helping Sandra, all these great things about it. Little did she know what they were doing to her daughter. If she knew, I'm sure she would not have written that letter. Because no. All right. So Devine met with victim Sandra Birchmore when she entered the program in 2011 at age 14. He was familiar with the difficult home life that she had both while in school and as an explorer and as an adult. When asked if he kept in touch with her, Devine said that he had not, but that Sandra Birchmore would find him, but she never had his cell phone, so she would find him on occasion and run into him, whatever. He discussed what does that mean, find him? Like, that's an odd term. She would find him. I think he's trying to say, like, she would just, we would run into each other. But I think what it really means is this is the giveaway of his own guilt. Like, she would find me, my patrol car, wherever I was parked, she would find me. Sicko, sicko, sicko. He discussed her obsession with police officers. Well, we know she had an admiration. That's not necessarily an obsession. He would meet her while he was on duty, and she would offer to bring him coffee, etc. They would typically talk for a while and then he would leave. This occurred about once per week. What? He's saying he met with her once per week, but he is also saying we didn't keep in touch. You're just contradicting yourself. Okay. Devine denied having any type of social interaction with Sandra Birchmore outside of his employment with the town. Before I move on, like, okay, so she would bring him a coffee and they would just talk for a little bit and then he would leave. That's his innocent explanation. Like, why would she be finding him and bringing him coffee? You know, this guy who's very, very, very much her senior. Why would he just, why would she just all of a sudden say, hey, this guy might want some coffee. I'm going to go hand him a coffee and talk to him? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. She was a young girl and he was much older than her. I don't know how old Devine was, but I think he was already like in his 40s, wasn't he? her late 30s at least. And to me, when I was in my early 20s or early teens, someone in their 40s was like, ew. Now, whatever. Whatever. So Devine discussed how Sandra Birchmore would exaggerate stories, and he spoke of her telling him of redacted. Devine discussed an encounter where Sandra Birchmore approached him at Doyle's pub in Brockton at around the time of her 21st birthday. She approached him at the bar and he left. Devine denied that he communicated with Sandra Birchmore on any texting, messaging, social platform, burner phone, Snapchat, or otherwise. He spoke of the redacted. Devine found out about the relationship between Farwell and the victim, Sandra Birchmore, when he got put out on leave. So that would be, he must have been on leave before they demoted him, and later qualified his response that Sandra Birchmore had mentioned the relationship previously as a consenting adult. She spoke to Devine about her relationship with William Farwell. Devine did not believe her. Okay, so right away we're not believing the victim, and we're gonna call our brother in blue a liar, or sorry, not a liar. We're gonna say that our brother in blue is on the up and up and telling the truth, and we're gonna call this young girl who has nothing to gain by lying. We're gonna say she's lying. Devine admitted to engaging in flirtatious behavior with a former police explorer and police intern named Redacted. He also spoke about former police explorers that he has kept contact with as adults. Devine denied knowledge of the Farwell brothers being accused of impersonating police while they were teenagers and pulling cars over. But we do know that that is the case. And how they became cops when they were doing that as teens, I do not know. All right, so the second interview of Robert Devine. Second interview had been scheduled for Thursday, August 18th, 2022. Devine resigned pending his application for retirement from employment prior to the interview date. The resignation was effective August 16th. Really? He resigns the 16th right after an interview is scheduled. That's not suspicious at all. And in a letter from the appointing authority accepting the resignation, there was a reference to his retirement. Okay. Devine authored a letter that was delivered to Chief McNamara by me that I received from Union President Barber. The letter had Chief McNamara's address in the heading but was addressed to the Stoughton Police Department. In the letter, Devine harshly criticized the investigation and in the second paragraph requests that if we have new ground to cover to send it to him in writing. Exhibit 17 encompasses this letter and a letter that I sent to Devine via first-class mail with a deadline to respond by Friday, August 26th. Wow. So he resigns before he's able to be interviewed for the second time, and he tells the Stoughton Department and the detective, or not the chief, that this investigation is wrong. Like he's criticizing them, like how dare you do this investigation, basically. And if you have anything else you have to say, write me. All right, so now this is somebody's redacted here, so this might be Heel again, potentially. On April 11th, 2022, I interviewed Redacted. Redacted was present with Redacted during the interview. Redacted was familiar with the fact that Sandra Birchmore was in the Police Explorers program because they spoke about it. Redacted was unfamiliar with members of the Stoughton Police Department other than Sandra Birchmore speaking about some members that Sandra Birchmore pointed out to him while they were driving together. Maybe it's not Josh Heel, the officer that he was the animal control officer that Sandra may have also been potentially having relations with, and that's why he stopped his interview and said he needed a lawyer. When asked about a text message that Redacted had sent to Sandra Birchmore about asking Redacted for money, the money owed Redacted, and absolutely no recollection of conversation. Redacted as shown the text message in which he threatens to disclose Sandra Birchmore's relationship with members of the Stoughton Police Department if she would not repay the debt owed to the quote girls. What girls? So they're threatening to out her relationship if she doesn't pay. This is bizarre. Redacted recalled, so this is probably isn't Heel, this is somebody else. Redacted recalled that Sandra Birchmore had mentioned Redacted, Matthew, and William Farwell in their past conversations. On April 4th, 2022, I interviewed Redacted at approximately 10 a.m. in my office for a prearranged interview. Redacted. Redacted had Sandra Birchmore redacted as Sandra struggles in the area of math. Sandra would have been in the 7th grade and approximately age 12 or 13. As a general impression, Redacted indicated when asked that Sandra was socially redacted, she would often accuse students of bullying her. So this might be a teacher. She would also accuse students of bullying her and spent a lot of time in guidance. Redacted, probably a teacher or someone, an adult at that school. Redacted felt that Sandra would exaggerate her accusations. She was a good kid with a kind heart. When I read a list of symptoms that described Redacted. When asked if she discussed drama at the Stoughton PD, Redacted spoke of Sandra talking to her about this. Redacted indicated that Sandra was obsessed with the Stoughton police. Redacted indicated that Sandra mentioned the high level of stress and officers seeking outlets to relieve the stress. Oh my God, that's a grooming line right there if you ever heard one. Sandra mentioned the high level of stress and officers seeking outlets to relieve the stress. Disgusting. Redacted punctuated her remarks by telling Sandra that. Redacted reconnected with Sandra as an adult via social media and eventually phone, and Redacted was aware that Sandra also reconnected with other former teachers. Yeah, so she is a former teacher. Sandra never mentioned the names of department members that had associations with when speaking with Redacted. So she didn't say names. On April 13th, 2022, Redacted was interviewed by PI Fries and I at MPTC headquarters in Randolph, Mass. At approximately 10:24 a.m. The nature of the investigation was disclosed. Redacted has been employed. Redacted. Redacted names some of the members of the Stoughton Police Department with whom he associates. It is mostly members of the midnight to 8 shift and some, what's 1600, 3 to midnight, 4 to midnight. Graduate, Redacted graduated from Stoughton High School with the victim Sandra Birchmore, so classmate. He did not associate with her during high school. Redacted is a part-time employee at Redacted. First time he saw Sandra Birchmore after high school was when he came to the store on or about the year 2019 and sought information on a license to carry application. Redacted something hosts the Massachusetts Basic Firearms Safety Class, which is a requirement for first-time LTC applicants. They became friends on Facebook and began talking on occasion. Redacted ran into Sandra Birchmore one night at the House of Brews and spoke briefly. They were there with separate friend groups. Redacted maintained that the relationship was merely an acquaintance. They met on one occasion for pizza at Town Spa, and the conversation was casual. They communicated by cell phone, text messaging, and Facebook Messenger prior to that at the Town Spa. Redacted felt that she was communicating with Redacted because she knew that he was a Redacted, and she would often contact Redacted about calls that were happening around town that she saw as she would drive around town. Redacted characterized when asked that Sandra Birchmore was erratic and okay, so something when characterized. Sandra When asked, Sandra Birchmore was erratic, and the conversation of the town spa was all over the place. What happened at the town spa? I have no idea. There must have been some rumor. Hold on one second. All right, all right. Where are we? All right. So redacted, excuse me, redacted is aware of who William Farwell, Matthew Farwell, and Robert Devine are. Redacted does not socialize with any of them. Redacted was shown a record of text messages that had been sent by Sandra Birchmore to a group chat in where she claims to have been invited to Robert Devine's house and that she was going. Redacted, who is a friend of hers. Redacted was unfamiliar with the discussion and denied ever having been to Robert Devine's house with or without Sandra Birchmore. That's odd. But I do believe people said that Sandra was known to fib, so I wonder if that has anything to do with it, but that is weird. Redacted was unaware of any communication that was happening between Robert Devine and Sandra Birchmore never mentioned the subject. She discussed her relationship with Matthew Farwell over text messaging. Redacted was aware as of June of 2019 that Sandra Birchmore had been in an on again, off again, redacted relationship with Matthew Farwell. Redacted was uncertain of which the relationship began. Redacted not believe Redacted did not believe Sandra Birchmore because she had a reputation dating back to high school for embellishing stories. So there is that. So she just discarded it as not real. Okay. When offered a closing comment, Redacted stated that there came a point shortly after meeting Sandra Birchmore at the town spa that Redacted had to block her contact on multiple platforms because she was making him uncomfortable. She would show up to locations where Redacted was hanging out with friends. She was making him uncomfortable. Whoever this person is that they're talking to. Sandra was making them uncomfortable. Weird. All right, on Thursday, June 9th, 2022, PI La Italian and Fries interviewed Redacted in her home. Both investigators were provided a copy of the MSP investigative report, copied below in the interview of summary of Redacted. On Thursday, June 9th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m., I met with Redacted. The meeting took place at her home in an outside patio area. I had spoken to her by phone earlier in the week, and she agreed to meet with me to discuss her knowledge about Robert Devine and the Stoughton Police Department explorers from the early 2000s. Redacted had previously, that was my dog, if you heard him moaning, he moans when he sits down. He's loud. Redacted had previously met with and was interviewed by Lieutenant John Fanning and Trooper Kathleen Prince. Both of these names come into play at the Karen Reed trial. Trooper Kathleen Prince was one of the investigators who took statements in the John O'Keefe investigation, and also Lieutenant Fanning was obviously one of the people that was mentioned and being in the group text of all the nasty comments that were going around. So, yeah, there's that. Both of the Mass State Police regarding the same topic. All right. So Robert Fries of Bridgewater accompanied me on this interview and was present for its entirety. Redacted read an article in the Boston Globe relative to the investigation of Sandra Birchmore's homicide. The article prompted her to contact the district attorney's office. On April 19th, 2022, she met with and was interviewed by Lieutenant Fanning and Trooper Prince. So there they are again. During the course of the interview, we referred to the report of the state police interview, which was written by Trooper Prince. And there's a whole big redacted paragraph. Robert Devine was an officer at the school who acted as a lunchroom and hallway monitor and also chaperoned a group of kids who stayed after school for open gym. Redacted was very open about having a crush on Devine during that time frame. She stated that she wrote him a letter and explained the content of the letter by saying, yeah, basically professing my love for him and how beautiful I thought he was. It's very cringy and embarrassing, but yeah, I wrote him a very detailed letter about my feelings for him. Her memory was that she wrote the letter in October and had a very good memory of it because of the events of September 11th that occurred previously. So it was the following month. So this person, whoever they're interviewing, is saying that Sandra had a crush on Devine and was writing him love letters. Redacted continued that she handed Devine the letter, and although he didn't read it in her presence, he gave her a hug and was laughing a little bit when she saw him in the following days. I asked if he ever addressed the fact that this letter was not appropriate considering her age and his role, and she answered, not at all. I asked if maybe he asked Sandra if he ever addressed it. When I asked specifically about the hug, she described it as definitely a squeeze and continued that Devine often hugged students and he always initiated the hugs. Gross. When asked if Devine ever touched her inappropriately, she was clear he never did. I referenced the state police report, paragraph 3, and asked about the occasion when he brought her into an office during open gym. She stated it occurred a couple of months after she gave him the letter. She had heard he was engaged to be married and she was sobbing. Devine led her to a room that she thought could have been a gym teacher's office. Once inside, Devine closed the door and lifted her onto the desk. Devine told her she was a knockout and that he was going to take me on a date when I turned 18. She continued that he gave her a hug and a kiss on the forehead. When asked to describe the distance from the gym to this office, she stated it was a good distance from the other kids and nobody could have heard them talking. Wow. I asked if there were ever any adults present during open gym. She stated there was occasionally another officer, but never anyone who worked for the school system. She stated there were generally 8 to 15 kids present for open gym and offered the Farwells were there. Why were the Farwells there? She stated they were teenagers at the time and they were there for all of it. They were under his wing. They knew that I was obsessed in love. This isn't Sandra, sorry. If I did say that, I'm not sure. This is whoever they're interviewing is saying they knew that I was in love. They knew they were there for all of it. There was one point where I believed it was Matt Farwell. I sobbed in his arms because Devine was getting married. They were there for all of it. She later added that Farwell's redacted by Devine. She continued redacted. Redacted continued that she regularly visited the police station to see Devine. She lived within walking distance and was allowed to go past the lobby area to Devine's office. She described an occasion when the shirt she was wearing was revealing of her cleavage and that Officer Tracy told her to pull up her shirt. She added that although she was too young to be a formal member of the Explorers program, she attended the meetings at the police station on Wednesday evenings. Isn't the Explorers program from 13 to 15 to 18? Didn't we just read that? So this child was under 13 years old because she couldn't be in the Explorers program, and she was trying to elicit attention from Devine. Redacted stated that Devine had provided an instant messenger username to some of the boys in the Explorers group. One of the boys, named John, with the nickname JR, gave her the username and she attempted to communicate with Devine using the platform. She stated there were a few short messages between the two and that her father's girlfriend observed her communicating with Devine on the computer. Why didn't he report that? Her father's girlfriend observed, so like his father or her father's dating someone. The girlfriend walks in and sees that she's talking to this older man on the computer. The girlfriend confronted Devine online, telling him he was a creep and redacted, and Devine blocked her after that. Her father's girlfriend's name was redacted, and they're no longer in touch. Okay. Why didn't the girlfriend report that? Why didn't she tell the dad and then report that to the police? It's disgusting. All right. Um, Redacted stated that there was a second letter she wrote that was meant for Devine. Her mother found the letter before it was ever delivered. After her mother found the letter, she stormed over to the police station to confront Devine. She described her mother as furious because Devine didn't reach out to her or anyone else about her behavior and just scoffed it off a little. Redacted stated that this is the occasion that led to her not attending the Explorers meetings any longer. It was her memory that it was the decision of her parents that she no longer attend. She was not aware of anyone from the police station telling her or her mother that she could no longer attend. So they just stopped going after this incident, after the mom found out that this inappropriateness was taking place. I don't think the mom knew that she had messaged him either, unless later that did come out, but they found the letter. All right, so redacted next described on occasion on Easter weekend 2002 when she attempted to place a phone call to Devine's home. It was this event that ended her good relationship with Devine. Sorry, there's or grammatical spelling errors, whatnot. I try to correct them so that the sentence makes sense. So she stated that she found his phone number and address in the phone book and that Devine did not provide this information to her. Following this event, her parents redacted. Following the Easter weekend incident, she no longer interacted with Devine. She did offer him an apology when she saw him in school, but after that, she didn't attend open gym. She stated there were occasions when she'd see him in Stoughton. She described occasions when she observed him with girls who were middle school age driving with him in his personal car. That's inappropriate right there. Gross. She further stated there were occasions when she and her friends were walking around town and he'd pull up and talk to them. She stated this occurred at times when he was in a police cruiser and at other times when he was in his own car. That's telling. She stated there was another occasion when she was in the 8th grade and was smoking a cigarette outside of the high school. He made a comment to her about the cigarette and later reported it to her mother. Jerk. I smoked like all throughout high school. Sorry, Mom. She knows. Um, I don't anymore, but I did. Toward the end of the interview, I asked Redacted if she thought Devine was acting as a big brother or father figure to the kids at the school or the kids in the Explorers. To this, she answered he was definitely not like the father figure. He definitely seemed to be showing off and loving attention from kids and basking in kids admiring him. So he's an egomaniac. He just wants his ego fed. She insisted there had never been any type of inappropriate activity between her and Devine. Redacted thanked us for meeting with her and stated she would remain available and we could contact her at any time with her further questions. This report is a summary of the interview. I mean, it's a good thing that her parents saw that and stepped in, and then she got caught a couple times trying to talk to him. It's a good thing. The report is a summary of the interview, redacted. The interview was approximately 41 minutes in duration and was recorded and later transcribed. A copy of the transcript is an exhibit associated with this report. All right, next is a phone interview of somebody who I don't know. On Thursday, June 9th at 7 p.m., I spoke by phone with Redacted. Earlier in the evening, I had left a message for her and she returned my call. Robert Fries was present for the interview as I spoke to Redacted on speakerphone. Redacted had spoken to the Mass State Police following the untimely homicide, because it is a homicide, of Sandra Birchmore. I'm of the opinion that it is. And we have a forensic pathologist, an independent forensic pathologist, world renowned, like top of his game type of forensic pathologist that says this was a homicide and not an attempt by her own hands to take her life. So she did not wish to meet us in person. This person they're interviewing did not wish to meet us in person, nor did she wish to name a formal witness. Be named. I'm sorry. I'm trying to read fast and like gets me going. I get excited talking about this stuff, and I make stupid errors. She did not wish to meet with us in person, nor did she wish to be named as a formal witness to this matter. We spoke with Redacted for approximately 26 minutes. Her major focus was that she believed Sandra, quote, would never commit, you know what, Redacted. She offered no first-hand information other than her belief. When asked if she ever met Matthew Farwell or William Farwell, she stated she had not. When asked if she had any information regarding Robert Devine, she stated she's aware of his history, but Sandra had never mentioned his name. Redacted added that she was living in Redacted during the COVID pandemic and quarantine and stayed in touch with Sandra by text and video messaging. Sandra shared information with her, Redacted. Redacted was clear that her major concern was her suspicion that Sandra had not redacted. I think they're saying taken her own life. She stated that she has been in touch with Lieutenant Fanning of the state police regarding her suspicion. Well, that's not going to get you anywhere because Lieutenant Fanning is likely part of the whole law enforcement ring that is violating their oath by what they're doing to young girls, let's say. Allegedly for Lieutenant Fanning. I can't confirm, but we do know that Devine and the Farwell brothers were in touch and were having inappropriate relations with Sandra. It's confirmed through this report here. All right, so she stated she had been in touch with Lieutenant Fanning to let them know of her suspicions. It is important to note that Redacted did the majority of the talking during our conversation, but added nothing firsthand that could be of assistance to this investigation. Now we have another phone interview. On Friday, June 17th at 10 a.m., I spoke by phone with Redacted. Redacted was at work and when I called, but agreed to speak with me for a few minutes. Redacted had made a Facebook post, Redacted, about the untimely homicide of Sandra Birchmore and members of the Stoughton Police Department. Redacted stated she hadn't spoken to Sandra Birchmore in years. She continued by saying, I wouldn't consider her a friend. They knew each other in middle school and they both graduated from Stoughton High School. She had no firsthand information about Sandra's homicide and added that everything she had heard was from family and friends of Sandra who posted information online. So it's all hearsay upon hearsay. I asked if she had spoken to any of the friends or family members, and she stated that she had not. She stated that the material that she read online was that certain members of the Stoughton Police Department had preyed on her instead of mentoring her. And we know that to be a fact now. I asked if she had been involved in the Explorers, and she stated she had not. Redacted could not speak for long, but stated she was glad to see the matter was being investigated. On Thursday, August 11th, Redacted was interviewed at the MPTC Randolph headquarters. We reviewed Redacted's employment history with Redacted. We discussed other roles with the school department, youth programs, and initiatives. We asked a series of questions pertaining to inappropriate conduct that he may have seen in relation to Officer Devine. We discussed the supply closet that was referenced by Redacted and Redacted. Redacted knew about the closet and that it was generally an athletic supply storage area. So, were things happening in that closet to get out of the open and into somewhere private in the storage closet? Redacted never saw Officer Devine in the closet alone with a student, hugging a student, having a student sitting on his lap, or any conduct of the nature. Redacted did not see Officer Devine using his personal vehicle to transport students at any time. Redacted was unfamiliar with any interaction involving Redacted. Redacted did not remember any exchanging of love notes between Redacted and Devine. When asked about Sandra Birchmore, Redacted characterized her as Redacted uh, was familiar with her class as Sandra Birchmore, was also familiar with her participation in the Police Explorers program. That's a really difficult sentence, so sorry, there's a lot of redacteds. Redacted never saw Sandra Birchmore with Officer Devine in any capacity. Okay, fair. After the homicide of Sandra Birchmore, Redacted began to hear rumors of her involvement with Matthew Farwell. Prior to that, Redacted did not have any knowledge of this. Redacted found it to be repulsive that Matthew Farwell had a relationship with a person. Redacted spoke of a sense of betrayal and losing a close friend in Matthew Farwell. Was that somebody that was friends with Matthew Farwell? Yeah, Redacted spoke of a sense of betrayal and losing a close friend in Matthew Farwell. So she must have been a friend of Matt as well. On August 11th, 2022, Redacted was interviewed by the MPTC headquarters building in Massachusetts. He appeared. Redacted, we also discussed Redacted's employment history. Redacted is familiar with the open gym process. We described the program, and when asked, Redacted never saw a student sitting on Robert Devine's lap or see any inappropriate contact. When asked specifically about the claim that Redacted made about being told to pull up her shirt up, Redacted described that if a student were ever inappropriately dressed, that Redacted would correct the behavior and send the student to the office. Redacted also recalled a discussion that Redacted had with Devine when Redacted saw a female student that Redacted thought was a police explorer scantily clad in his Devine's office. Redacted confronted Devine about the optics of this visit by the student and cautioned Devine about being smarter with his actions. So all you're doing is telling him be better at hiding it. After hearing what Redacted described, the student was likely not Redacted, did not recall an incident as described involving Redacted. Ugh. We discussed Sandra Birchmore. Redacted characterized Redacted and was familiar with her participation on the Police Explorers and that she was a member of the martial arts gym across from the station. Redacted knew that she wanted to intern for the police department and had done so at the court. When asked about another encounter involving a haunted house that Redacted did at Redacted House, Redacted recalled Robert Devine and his wife attending the event. Redacted would hold the event annually, and he recalled seeing Devine with a woman named Redacted. He thought the encounter to be odd, as it appears that Devine was with her and Redacted arrested her for Redacted when he and Devine were working Redacted. Devine pointed out Redacted had turned her life around. So he was hanging out with some woman or somebody at this party at Devine's house where he had arrested her for something, and then he was later saying that she turned her life around. Weird. I located in-house records for Redacted that corroborated the previous Redacted. So where was his wife? Wasn't his wife around during that party? I don't know. Credibility assessment. All right, we're almost done, guys. I view Redacted as a credible person. The relationship had its inception from a teacher-counselor relationship and evolved into a friendship of sorts. When Sandra Birchmore reconnected with Redacted as an adult, Redacted seemed to have a genuine desire to help the victim, Sandra Birchmore, and had a foundational knowledge of the difficulties that Sandra Birchmore had been struggling with in her early years. Redacted responses were unwavering and consistent. I did not view any indicators of deception or a lack of consistency in her responses. She was interviewed by Mass State Police. I view Redacted as a credible person. She is Redacted, Sandra Birchmore, and provided a considerable amount of secondhand knowledge about the events of the life of Sandra Birchmore. She had some contact with the media and friends of Sandra Birchmore and had been interviewed by phone by Mass State Police. She felt strongly that Matthew Farwell redacted Sandra Birchmore in the years prior to her homicide. Redacted with Sandra Birchmore had more contact with her and more frequently communicated with her. Dis- uh, Her discussions with Sandra seemed to be of a pragmatic nature in reference to the something, to the blank, blank, blank. I do not view Redacted as a credible person. During his interview, he provided little information, if any. When asked about a confrontational text message that he had had with the victim, Sandra Birchmore, over owed money to, quote, the girls, he could not recall the conversation or the last names of the girls. Having described that they shared a dorm/suite, I find it implausible that Redacted could not recall this information. He also demonstrated a very high degree of nonverbal guarded behavior, was sweating, and appeared to be very nervous throughout the interview. That's something to look into. High degree of nonverbal guarded behavior, sweating, nervous. That's something that would pique my interest in him as a suspect. I view Redacted to be a credible person. At no time did I observe him deviate from his baseline poise, and I saw no indicators of deception. His answers were direct and showed no hesitation. He appeared comfortable in discussing Birchmore with PI Fries and I. All right. Robert Devine. I do not view Robert Devine as a credible person. All right, then. Say it like you mean it. He denied having any sort of redacted or social relationship with the victim, Sandra Birchmore. Subsequent to his first interview, Chief McNamara and I were briefed by PI La Italian and Fries on his responses to the interview. Hearing the responses, we were both in agreement that Devine had been untruthful. Devine had been untruthful about his knowledge of the Farwell brothers having been caught impersonating the police. So Devine was, remember, the Explorer's director when the Farwell brothers were in it, when they were in the program as children. And Devine could have possibly have been grooming them back then. Who knows? But we know that according to this report, this interview, the Holmes, Deputy Chief Holmes, says Devine has not been truthful about his knowledge of the Farwell brothers. This fact would have been a part of the background investigation process that Devine, as a member of the hiring panel for Farwell, would have been privy to. And he knew them when they were kids as well. In this fact was widely known throughout the department. Devine's response was that, quote, that must have been before my time, end quote, was an implausible response. Devine was in charge of the police explorers and was familiar with the Farwell brothers. Devine frequently sat on the hiring panel for new hires. As part of that process, Devine would have been briefed on a background investigation by the investigating detective. Exhibit 34 is an excerpt from the background investigation of William Farwell. The excerpt shows that William Farwell spoke to the investigator about being counseled by Sergeant Devine and Lieutenant Bonney about getting caught in the act of impersonating the police. There you go. There's proof, written documentation that William Farwell was being spoken to by a sergeant and a lieutenant about their behavior. In addition, after the completion of the first interview, an abundance of evidence to the contrary of his responses was uncovered. A Facebook alias showed Devine Sandra Birchmore showed Devine redacted Sandra Birchmore as well as her relationship with Matthew Farwell redacted. They also discussed meeting redacted. Okay. At the completion of this credi- eh, at the completion of this credibility assessment, a second interview of Devine was pending and would widen in scope to include untruthfulness in addition to a myriad of other policy violations for the relationship with redacted. But he resigned before they could do this second interview. In a previous investigation that resulted in Devine's demotion from deputy police chief to patrolman, redacted. Redacted, the investigation found that Devine was lacking in candor in some of his responses, but did not make a sustained finding for untruthfulness. Devine's history with the investigation conducted by Paul White is an expository example of exploitive, misogynistic, and risk-taking behavior that superseded his professional responsibilities in that case as well as this. In both cases, Devine violated his inherent position of the public trust. Yes, he did. For the foregoing reasons, I do not view Devine to be a credible person. Second interview of Devine. The second interview had been scheduled and was conducted at the MPTC headquarters in Randolph, so they rescheduled it, I guess. This interview was scheduled for Thursday, the August 18th. Robert Devine resigned from his employment. From this, I drew a negative inference. Okay, so they didn't get to reschedule. A series of questions that would have been asked of Robert Devine is detailed in Exhibit 13. I do not view redacted as a credible person. In his first interview, he denied having a redacted with the victim, Sandra Birchmore. The interview process was stopped with this line of questioning began, as well as questions pertaining to his knowledge of other members of the Stoughton Police Department that Sandra Birchmore was involved with. Redacted arranged for further consultation with Redacted, described his friendship with Sandra Birchmore that evolved into him in a quasi Big Brother role. This has to be Josh Heel, in which he would give her life advice. Some of his advice included direction on her relationship with Matthew Farwell. She needed someone to talk to, man. She didn't have anybody in her corner, really. I mean, she had friends, but everybody says, well, I wasn't really close with her. So I don't know who, like, I think there's only been one person that has said she was really close with Sandra. After several attempts to schedule a second interview, Redacted would have to be compelled by the order of Redacted in order to comply with the policy of Redacted. To that extent, I would characterize Redacted as a reluctant witness, albeit a compelled witness. From this evasive effort, I draw a negative inference. Some discussions recovered from evidence Exhibit 18 centered on his desire to meet a Redacted, so admitted to the illicit conversations that he would have with Sandra Birchmore. In my opinion, Redacted is a conflicted and non credible witness in that he was friends, quote unquote, friends with Sandra Birchmore, whom he knew was troubled, yet engaged in suggestive conversations that ultimately led to his admission in his second interview, Redacted. P.I. La Italian and I both left with the impression, based on but not limited to the above, that Redacted was involved in Redacted Sandra Birchmore, but admitted as much as he needed to conclude his role as a witness in this case. Hmm, I think that's Josh Heel, but I don't know. Credibility assessment completed by P.I. La Italian. Redacted was interviewed by myself and my colleague Robert Fries. Oh, wait, what? Why is it saying it's by this guy, but then it's saying they did it? I don't know. We won't know because it's redacted up here. All right, so we interviewed her at Redacted Home, located at Redacted on June 9th, 2022 at approximately 5:30 p.m. I view Redacted as a credible person. Redacted was forthcoming retrospectively in that Redacted described as a crush that she had on Robert Devine while Redacted was a middle school student and Devine serving as the juvenile officer, writing Devine love notes, etc. Redacted expressed embarrassment for Redacted's behavior during that time. Conversely, Redacted took the risk of explaining questionable and/or inappropriate behavior by Robert Devine in his role as an adult and public official. In reviewing this interview, Redacted comments and answers to my questions were consistent with that of the MSP interview by Kathleen Prince and Lieutenant John Fanning, and I did not note any dramatic deviations from what Redacted was now reporting to us. When challenged, Redacted did not did not appear nervous and did not observe any indicators of deception. It is important to note that Redacted contacted the district attorney's office after reading a news article in the Boston Globe. She did this on her own and is willing to be named in not only my report but as well as in the investigation. All right. I view Redacted as a credible witness. He was asked to recall events that exceeded 2 decades. His demeanor was resolute in responses to questions, and he appeared to be upset by some of the content of the questioning. I would characterize emotional responses as normal given the content of the discussion. He made a statement toward the end of the interview that had he observed any inappropriate behavior during any of the time that he worked with Devine, that he would have begun by saying something to him and would have not allowed any inappropriate behavior on Devine's part to continue. I view Redacted to be a credible witness. His responses were consistent and unwavering. He was asked to recall circumstances that exceeded 2 decades. Though he could not remember some of what had happened, Redacted approached me the day after his interview and showed me a picture of Redacted from the OMS yearbook. He told me that he vaguely remembered her, but that he remembers a confrontation in the juvenile office between her and Devine. He recalls that there was a circumstance, but cannot recall specifically what the circumstance was. He also asked me if I could pull up a picture of redacted. As soon as she had not been identified, I requested redacted the identify of her mother. Redacted told me when I reached out to her by phone that she wanted to ask her permission first before giving out the name. I did not hear back from Redacted, who seemed genuinely interested in helping solving the case. Here's the conclusion of Chief Deputy Chief's Holmes' investigation into the investigation, basically. Conclusion: Robert Devine took control of the Stoughton Police Explorers class on or about 2002 and changed the program model from that of a police explorer scouting program to that of a quasi paramilitary program that centered on teaching aspects of policing to youth participants. It was in this program that Devine met Matthew and William Farwell. Whoops, I didn't mean to just do that. Highlighted nothing. All right, the Farwell brothers were known to have had some difficulties and disciplinary issues while attending school. Both embraced the Explorers program with vigor and participated in all aspects of the program. Both eventually left alternative education and entered military service. Matthew Farwell was appointed to the Wellesley Police Department in September 8, 2015. He transferred to the Stoughton Police Department by way of a lateral transfer on February 27th of 2012. William Farwell was bypassed for employment on September 6, 2011. In 2014, he received an offer of employment for the position of patrol officer. He then requested and received a military deferment under the USERRA Act. He had also received an appointment to the Massachusetts State Police and briefly attended the MSP Recruit Academy. He was eventually appointed to the Stoughton Police Department on March 27, 2017. The Farwell brothers returned to the Explorers program as instructors. Matthew Farwell met Sandra Birchmore while she was a participant in this program and was 13 years of age at the time. Matthew Farwell began Redacted's relationship with Sandra Birchmore. Evidence shows that he redacted while she was 15 years of age and Farwell was 27 years of age. So big gap in age. Sandra Birchmore, and she's a minor, obviously. Sandra Birchmore was redacted with Matthew Farwell as a result of his role as an adult instructor in the Explorers program. This relationship led to Sandra Birchmore redacted relationship with William Farwell and Robert Devine. Sandra Birchmore lost her life on February 4th, 2021, or at least that's when they found her. The Massachusetts Medical Examiner says a bunch of stuff and it's redacted. They don't want to let us know anything in this report. I don't know how they are getting off on saying that she lost her life on the 4th because she was just found on the 4th, but all activity ceased prior to Matt Farwell walking in her apartment door. Matthew Farwell is redacted. After a review of the personnel file of Robert Devine, I located 2 letters. One letter is from the mother of Sandra Birchmore and is dated April 17th, 2014. The letter, in essence, is extending thanks to the Stoughton Police Department, I mentioned that, and in particular, Devine for running the Police Explorers program. There you have it. The second letter is not dated or signed, but titled My Hero, Lieutenant Devine, and is a musing to Devine for all he has done for the community. I have entered these as exhibits and exemplify both the public trust that was violated and the Stoughton Police Explorers class was supposed to be, what it was supposed to be. On January 24th, 2016, Robert Devine entered into an agreement for discipline between the town and an employee following the investigation that was conducted by Paul White. On February 12th, 2016, Civil Service Form 10 was completed in where Devine was reinstated from the position of non-civil service deputy chief to his former chief service position of police lieutenant. What? Civil Service Form 11 to 10 was completed for the issuance of a demotion. Okay, so there was a demotion from lieutenant to civil service police officer. So Devine completed a 60-day period of suspension in April of 2016. In the internal affairs file for Robert Devine, the agreement for the imposition of discipline is included with the case file. Under the terms of this agreement, Section 5 describes voluntary execution. Mr. Devine acknowledges that he has thoroughly read this agreement, that he understands it and is entering into it of his own free will, and further, that he understands that further instances of him misusing his position or engaging in conduct unbecoming a police officer or other misconduct may result in more serious disciplinary action being taken against him, up to and including termination from his employment. How about jail time for doing things that are illegal to everybody else, but because he's a cop, he doesn't go to jail? The investigation by Paul White contained a finding that Robert Devine was not a credible person. This was a sustained finding of conduct unbecoming in this case. Recommendation. The 3 employees who were implicated as the subjects of this investigation resigned from employment. We are now required to make notification to the Post Commission. It is my recommendation that Robert Devine, William Farwell, and Matthew Farwell have their certifications revoked by Post. That means they can no longer be a cop. So far they've just resigned at this point, and they could still go apply for employment somewhere else. But with them notifying the Post Commission, they can decertify them so that they can never be cops again. And this can never happen again, at least by their hands. All right, so it is my suggestion that their certifications be revoked by Post and that they be entered into the National Decertification Index, which is any cops who are decertified, you get listed, and it's basically out there for the world to know you're probably a shady cop and you can't be trusted. And if you were to testify in the court of law and your name's on there, you're not a very good witness. All right, so I recommend that we request of the Post Commission ahead of Post holding a hearing that Post file a subpoena for Facebook records to authenticate Marty Riggs as being Robert Devine and take any action within the scope of Post authority, because then he would have lied to them and been talking to a minor and meeting up with her for physical activities that I can't say on here. I recommend that this entire document be sent to consultants or experts in the field of forensics statement analysis for an analytical assessment of transcripts to gauge the truthfulness of the responses of Robert Devine, as well as the statements that were made to the MSP by William and Matthew Farwell, as compared to this document and all the evidence that has been submitted in this case. The objective in this recommendation is to obtain or ascertain in a collegial manner an opinion as to the foregoing. I recommend that this entire document be sent to consultants or experts in the field of forensic psychology, particularly to an expert with a specific knowledge of child victimology and redacted behavior. The objective in this recommendation is to obtain or ascertain in a collegial manner an opinion as to the foregoing. I recommend that this document and all respective communications concerning a relationship between the victim, Sandra Birchmore, and any military recruitment personnel be routed through the appropriate military chains of command for further investigation by the appropriate agency within the MA National Guard. And there's allegations that the recruiter that I think it was William Farwell got her, put her in touch with, that they were having inappropriate relations. I recommend that this report, as well as the transcripts for redacted interviews, be shared with redacted. I recommend that the Norfolk County District Attorney receive a copy of this report. So the Norfolk DA, Michael Morrissey, knows this is happening. This was happening long before Karen Reed. All this corruption and cover up and BS going on with cops. But he's he hasn't done anything about it, and he continues to let them run amok in the state police, especially. Employees were identified as witnesses in this case. It is my conclusion, based upon this investigation and all relevant evidence, that no other current member of the Stoughton Police Department had an inappropriate relationship with the victim, Sandra Birchmore. As this case number is concluded concerning now former employees, I am also recommending that case number be assigned as a continuation of this investigation for any other people who may come forward with information, and to allow for follow-up with former members of the Police Explorers program. So this is not this internal investigation is not complete. It's not over by any means. If more information were to come forward, they're going to continue to add onto their report. But however, this is what they concluded. Brian J. Holmes, Deputy Chief. Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for doing the right thing, being a good and honest cop, and letting us know what the dirty cops are doing. Because if you're not a good cop, if you're letting the dirty cops run amok and you're just allowing it to happen. So, speaking of that, I will be doing a video in my Canton Cover Up series soon. Helena Rafferty, she's the Canton police police chief, and she's being sued because she had hit somebody while she was driving. She just didn't see him in the crosswalk apparently, and it's an elderly man. She hurt him badly, and she kept it from the city for a while. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in one of my upcoming episodes. So make sure that you are subscribed. And if you have any questions, or if you find any interesting takes on the Sandra Birchmore case and you want to learn more, let me know, and I can always look into it. Where are we as far as um, this case? I've got it all. Sorry, I want to look at my notes here. I've got it all laid out. So episodes, the next episode, I lied last time because I said we were going to be doing a deep dive into Robert Devine. We are going to be doing a deep dive into Robert Devine, but it's in the next episode. And then we'll continue on from there. There's going to be a civil suit. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about kind of where the case is. We'll bring it up to speed, up to date. And so only a couple more episodes in this series. Unfortunately, there's not really a lot to go over. Like in the Karen Reed case, you'll go on for days and days and days with how many details are inconsistent and whatnot. With this, there's not as much to go over, but we're going to do it. We're going over what we have so far. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you guys so much for being here. Please hit that like button on the way out. I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye. If you've been impacted by a true crime and would like your story told in your own words, or if you or someone you know has been wrongfully convicted or accused of a crime, please write to crimeincourtchannel@gmail.com and tell us your real true crime encounters. Thanks for watching.